Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to My Villain Academia, Season 5, Episode 21. And yes, I'm going to keep referring to it that way. I just think it's fun because of the arc title being so close to the title of the series and everything. Just being a play on it. We're just going to keep referring to it that way, just for fun. But, so, talking about this, last time we had a focus on the villains starting, and we got to learn a little bit more interesting information. Finding out that, oh god, what's his name? I can't think of his name. The Shadow guy. We found out he's a Nomu. I don't know why I can't think of his name. I just keep thinking Shigaraki, but no, that's not Shigaraki. But yeah, we found out he's a Nomu, and we find out that when he was human, he was a friend to Aizawa and Present Mike. But we also see that he's still in there. Even if it's very deep down, even if he can't really control anything, he is still deep in there. Which is really sad when you think about it. It's really depressing, really just hard to think about. I talked about last time how it's always been something I've kind of thought about, like with zombies and stuff, like wondering, like, what if the person's, like, consciousness was still in there and just couldn't control anything? It's just always been kind of like one of the freakiest, like, just concepts to me. The idea of not being able to control your body to any degree and just having it, like, kind of on autopilot, or having someone else in control of it. But yeah, so we got something with that, but it doesn't look like we're going to focus too much on that going forward, because it's going to focus more on the rest of the League of Villains, who have decided to take on Gigantomachia in order to get him to their side. However, Gigantomachia, despite being extremely loyal to All for One, does not believe that Shigaraki is a worthy successor, and as such is attacking him. So they take turns, they take shifts to fight him, and he can fight for a long time with very little rest. So it's pretty much not much is happening with that, because they don't want to, like, hurt him or kill him or anything, because they want him on their side. But at the same time, they can't just let him kill them either. So they're basically just fighting him fruitlessly, just trying to figure out what to do. They end up getting a call from ReDirect, the leader of the Meta Liberation Army, and he tells them that he has Gizan, I think his name is, the information broker that they've worked with, as a hostage. And so they're basically forced into this working relationship with the Meta Liberation Army. But it also seems like things are going to go into a bit of a war, which this takes place before the Endeavor arc stuff. So we kind of got a glimpse at, like, what this is leading to. So yeah, it's probably going to be pretty crazy. So they're going to head out, and they're going to use Gigantomachia being able to track and attack Shigaraki as a way to fight against their perceived enemy, which is pretty interesting, pretty fun. Um, Wonder how that's going to turn out. We'll have to see. We will have to see. We also got introduced to this doctor who I, again, swear is the doctor from the beginning of the series. But he is the one who apparently creates the Nomus, and he's been doing some other stuff for All for One for a long time. He agrees to work with the League of Villains, but wants them to kind of prove themselves. So he's kind of on their side, kind of not. We'll see how it goes. But he definitely seems like he's got a lot of plans for all of this. And I'm definitely interested to see where they take his character going forward. But yeah. And going back to Gigantomachia real quick, we also found out that apparently his body, without modification, can hold multiple quirks, something that I assume All for One just experimented with. So the tracking thing is probably a quirk that All for One gave him. And it seems like he might have a couple others too. So I'm wondering if we'll get any actual confirmation on that. So far, the setup for this arc is pretty interesting, but I feel like it's still got to do a little bit more. I've heard apparently, after this episode was released, today's episode, I apparently heard that some people are like really disappointed with how this is being adapted, and I'm just going to remind everyone here, I'm an anime only. I do not read the manga, so I will not be judging this based on how it was adapted. This will be purely judged based on how it is shown here. And so, yeah, that's all that matters. If you don't like that, if you don't like the fact that I don't read the manga or whatnot, I guess too bad. Because it's like I don't read manga. So it's like it's not going to change. You're not going to change my mind on that. And it's just, this is how I'm going to view it. And maybe that is why I love this season so much more than a lot of people seem to. Maybe that is why I think this is one of the best seasons of the series. But I don't know. Whether it is or not, that's not important. The reasoning doesn't really matter. All that matters here is that I enjoyed it. And that you enjoy the reactions, nonetheless. So yeah. We're going to get on with this, hope for the best, and see what this episode has in store for us. So let's do it. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So before we get into the real meat of this episode, let's quickly discuss what we learned at the beginning. So the Metal Liberation Army was formed not very long after quirks first started appearing. The leader, Destro, formed the group as a liberation group, as a way to fight for equal rights and opportunities to allow people to use their quirks freely. And as I stated in the reaction, Um, that's not that bad of a thing. That's really not altogether that terrible. It's actually like connecting it to real life. It's a lot like a lot of liberation groups and whatnot throughout history, just wanting to be treated the same as everyone else, to have to not be seen as bad guys or dangerous, to not be controlled, to not be treated like second class citizens in a way. And eventually it all went wrong. The uh, the government, the law enforcement, they ended up putting a stop to the Meta Liberation Army and arresting most of them, including Destro, who, after writing his book while in prison, committed suicide. He unknowingly had a son, however, who is the current leader, ReDestro, and who seems to be taking things in a little more aggressive of a manner. It still seems like the ideology is probably still there to a degree, but he's definitely a lot more aggressive about it than his father was. Um, that's what I'm getting from this. Unless it's saying like Redestro is not just straight up like the son, unless he's just the descendant overall. Because I don't know, that it just seems like it couldn't have been that short of a time ago. Like even if Redestro is older than he looks, because he looks like he's maybe in his 40s or 50s. Even if he's older than that, it's just like he's it still seems pretty young considering at least how many generations of One for All we know there are. It just seems like it should be a lot more. Maybe that's just me though. And maybe it is just that. Maybe it's not saying that Redestro is specifically his son, but just a descendant because he did have a son. So his descendant, whether grandson or whatever, great grandson, maybe even, is the actual. That's who Redestro is. I don't know for sure. It didn't really specify here. Um, but outside of that, outside of some stuff seeing Shigaraki and the improvement of his quirk, and just checking in on the other members of the league, this episode was very Himiko Toga focused. And as you all know, that's a big positive for me. She's my favorite villain in this series, one of my favorite characters in the series. So more screen time and information for her is always welcome. And in this episode, we got a large amount of backstory for her. Maybe not every little bit, but we got what matters. We found out a lot about her and why she is the way she is. Why she, quote unquote, went crazy and everything. And it's really eye opening. Um, it really is. So during this episode, the as was planned, our villains head to this town. There they find out that it is 90% controlled by the Meta Liberation Army, that 90% of the citizens there are all basically sleeper members of the army, and that they've been training daily to prepare for the oncoming war, basically. Um, so we get to see them attack the League of Villains, and I don't know their full reasoning. We do know, obviously, that the Meta Liberation Army wants to take out the League of Villains, but there might be a little more to this specific attack, because I don't necessarily think Redestro believes that this is going to take them out. I don't think he necessarily believes that this is enough. but we'll have to see. He seems too smart for that. But amongst everything else, the focus of this episode is the fight between Himiko and Chitose Kizuki, also known as Curious. Curious is the blue skinned woman we see in the intro and everything. She is a reporter who wants to know the true story behind things, and specifically here behind Himiko. She had heard all of these reports about Himiko, all of these news stories, but she wants to know the truth behind her, why she is like she is. And here we get to find out Himiko's backstory. Even as Curious is using her bomb-based quirk, her very Yoshikage Kira-like quirk, turning anything she touches into a bomb. Even while she's using that, even being able to turn blood itself into a bomb, which is very detrimental for Himiko based on her quirk, we see that Himiko, because of her quirk and because of other factors like that, she became fascinated by blood at a very young age, which is fairly natural. And she started doing things that her parents and others around her didn't like. They saw her as a freak, they saw her as creepy and weird and unnatural, and they not only just believed this, but they told her this to her face. They very openly would just basically abuse her emotionally and mentally because she just happened to be unusual in their eyes. Creepy, again. And it's like she ended up putting on this mask for a lot of her childhood. This mask of normalcy, trying to pretend to be just a normal, nice girl. But eventually, she couldn't hold it anymore. She couldn't hold in who she was. She couldn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. So she snapped. She attacked a fellow student by the end of her time in middle school, and using a straw, she ingested his blood. And from what we saw, she was crying, and I don't think those tears were necessarily out of regret for what she did, but more so out of regret that she felt she had to do it, that she snapped and just had to be herself. She was upset at how she had been treated, how she had been viewed, how people looked at her, and felt how she was. And the fact that she had been brought to this point upset her, and it would upset pretty much anyone. So following that, she disappeared. She kind of ran away and ended up embracing her quirk, her curiosity towards blood and everything, out of a desire to live normally. Her desire is she wants to live a normal life. She wants to be normal. She wants to be like the ones she loves. And she loves people who, in her eyes, are normal, are just everyday people who are able to embrace what they have. People like Deku, like Uraraka. People who she can basically desire to be like, who she can become almost inspired by. This is why she has such a love for Deku and Uraraka. Why she is so, like, legitimately obsessed with them. Because she kind of wants to be like them. And we see that she doesn't like being looked down on through all of this. She doesn't like being seen as someone who needs to be fixed or someone who needs to be treated or whatnot, because she just wants to be normal. She wants to live a normal, happy life. And it's actually really fucking sad. She's been mistreated for so long that it drove her basically insane. It drove her to villainy because of how people treated her. When, if they had fostered her personality, if they had fostered her interests in blood and whatnot, she probably could have been a very, well, normal person. Exactly what she wants. She could have probably been, hell, a scientist who studies that kind of stuff. There's a lot of like possibilities that she could have gone towards if only the people in her life had actually cared to help her rather than hurt her. But instead, she broke. And it is genuinely sad. We see why she is the way she is. And while we don't know like every little detail, every little piece, we understand her a lot more now. And this is the kind of shit I love with this series. And this is a continued reason why season 5, up to this point, and with only like, what, 4 more episodes to go in this season, this is why this this season has been one of my favorites in this entire series. Because despite what a lot of people like to say, it hasn't been slow. It hasn't been boring. It's been excessively interesting and fun the entire time. Just because there hasn't been a lot of really heavy action and fighting and confrontations between the heroes and the villains doesn't make it boring. It doesn't make it slow. That's not how that works. The development and core growth of the series, of the characters and the story has been immense here. And the presentation of it all is phenomenal. It's undeniable to me how good this season is. And it's just, it makes no sense hearing all these people complaining about it. It just does not make sense to me. And it's like, sure, maybe it's a different perspective from the eyes of someone who is a manga reader. I will give you that. Because they're looking at this and seeing how it's adapted. That's basically what matters to them here. The manga readers see the manga as the quintessential version of this series, which, I mean, in a way, it kind of is. I mean, it is how Horikoshi, well, created it. They see it as how the series is supposed to be. So when they watch the anime, what they're looking for is how it's adapted from that. That is what is largely on their mind. So if it's not adapted exactly right, a lot of times manga readers will complain. And this goes for any series. If any series is adapted into an anime from a manga or a light novel or whatever, and for them isn't adapted to the degree that they expect or that they desire, they're going to get pissy. And this has always bothered me because it's like, it's so, it almost comes across as elitist. Like, the anime adaptation's never going to be quite the same as the manga. It can't. Even the most accurate adaptations are going to have to change some things because it's a different medium. Anime and manga are two completely different mediums that require different things. And that includes things like pacing. That includes things like just how certain scenes are presented visually. And of course, you have the audio and stuff that the manga just does not have. You have to take that into account. It's not always going to be the same. Plus, you have with anime, you also have to account for censors. These are shows that air on television for the most part. So you have to account for the fact that there's going to be censorship. And again, there are going to be things cut for time. Because these people adapting it into the anime also have to keep to schedules. They have to keep to time constraints. It's not going to be a perfect adaptation. But so many manga readers, for many series, not just My Hero, but definitely My Hero as well, a lot of these manga readers expect, not just want, but expect the adaptation to be one to one. And every time, when it's not if it's not, when it's not, because it never is, they'll complain and bitch and whine because they didn't get what they expected to get. Instead, they're refusing to see it as it is. And that's where it comes in for anime onlys. Anime onlys, this is their, like, this is what they see of the series. This is what we experience. We don't have anything to look to as like, oh, how was this adapted? How was this originally in the manga? For an anime only, that usually doesn't matter. Because we're viewing it from the perspective of someone who doesn't know the manga, who hasn't read it, who is only watching the anime. And so to us, what matters is just how well the episodes and seasons and arcs are done within the context of specifically just the anime. On its own merit, without having to compare it to anything else, how well is it done? And from that perspective, I don't know about other anime onlys, because most people I see talk about this aren't anime onlys. But I don't know about other anime onlys and their views on this season. But for me, it's like, again, as I said, this season has been one of the best of this series for me. And that's just speaking from an anime perspective, just speaking on how it is what we've got. The pacing's been fantastic. The story's been fantastic. The character, the development, everything. And so far, this final arc of the season, My Villain Academia, no matter whether it was rearranged from the manga's original order or not, really doesn't matter to me. Because all that matters to me here is how it's presented. And so far, with these first couple episodes, it's been, again, fantastic. It's been outright amazing, really. And I could see this arc easily being the best of the entire series, depending on how it goes for these last 4 episodes. So, yeah. I just personally feel that a lot of the manga readers oftentimes, and this is not for everyone, mind you. I'm not trying to say this like as a blanket term for all manga readers or anything, but a lot of them that I've seen tend to be very just expectant of things going their way. And if it doesn't, they just get pissy and whine a lot. And again, this is not just for My Hero. I'm talking about this for any anime that was adapted from a manga or light novel. um, or I guess most anything else that it was adapted from too. But an adapted anime, fans of the original medium are always going to complain, always, and it's just I this is one of the reasons, and this goes for even outside of anime, cartoons that were adapted from something, movies that were adapted from books or other things. I always judge on their own merits, even if I know what they're adapted from. I always judge them on their own merits because I feel it's wrong to just view it as an adaptation. I feel it's wrong to just try to compare it. It's a completely different medium and it needs to be viewed differently. Just trying to compare it to the original source, you're never going to like it that way because it's never going to be the same. Never. So yeah. Sorry about the bit of a rant I went on with that, but it's just this has been a really consistent thing I've been seeing in this season. And it's like it's again made no sense to me and just it it irritates me every time I see it, honestly. And yeah, part of that is because I disagree with those views. And here's the thing: if you don't like this season, you're that. If that's just your opinion, that's fine. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that you have to like the season. If you don't like it, if you don't like the things they did in it, that's fine. I'm just saying that you shouldn't go into it expecting it to be a carbon copy of the original source material because it's not going to be. It never will be. They're going to cut things. They're going to pace things differently. That is how it has to go. It's not an option. That is how it has to go. And that is how it always will go. But I guess getting back on track here. Himiko and this woman, whose name I already forgot again, Curious, fight a bit. We learn Himiko's backstory, and then we find out Himiko can apparently copy not just the appearance, but apparently the quirks of others as well. And this is apparently something new, even to her. She had not known she could do this before, it just kind of ended up happening. And from what it seems, based on what we heard, she did apparently kill Curious. Like, yeah, when she dropped those others, we saw the blood squirt up and everything, but we didn't actually see Curious die or anything. And obviously, again, censorship and stuff has to happen, but yeah, it's just that's interesting because again, she's kind of in the opening, so I thought she once she appeared, she'd have more of a relevance. But I guess if this is only like 4 more episodes, um, maybe not. I don't know. I didn't expect that. Not that I'm complaining about it. I'm fine with it. Um, she was basically just a villain to be introduced for this fight, for the sake of this battle with Himiko, in order to develop her. And honestly, in the end, I think it was very much worth it. I think it was a fantastic fight, even if it was one sided most of the time. Um, and again, the stuff we learned about Himiko was so just fantastic and important and really made me like her character that much more. And I'm very interested to see how they work with Shigaraki's improvement to his quirk, because apparently now the decay can spread to things that he hasn't even touched. If he touches, like, it showed him, like, touch one person, basically, and the decay spread to everyone else who was around that person. And I don't know if it was spread through those other people that person he touched touching the other people and so on and so forth, or if it just spread to everything that Shigaraki saw as an enemy at that point. I'm very curious about that though. And at the end, we see Twice finds Himiko really badly injured and is really upset by it because we know, again, Twice and Himiko we've seen are actually pretty close. And that's when this other guy in the Meta Liberation Army creates these like clones in a way of uh of of Twice, of his like normal appearance and all, and has them attack. Apparently, this guy can turn inanimate objects into uh, basically clones of people, and that's like, oh, okay, interesting. And he has them attack, and that's kind of where the episode leaves off. So we don't really know what happens after that. But yeah, so a lot of very interesting stuff happening, and I'm very excited to see where we go next episode with it all. But tell me in the comments below what you thought of this episode of My Hero Academia. And again, if you didn't like this episode or didn't like this season as it's been going, your opinion is valid. I want to make that clear. If you didn't like it, that's perfectly valid. But just try to understand that from my perspective, as an anime only, I think that this season has been one of the best of the series by far. And I wish people would view things not just as an adaptation of something else, but on its own merits. Because again, if you just view it as an adaptation of something, you're always going to be disappointed. And I'm speaking from experience, by the way, with the Harry Potter movies, actually. Because those definitely did not adapt everything properly from the books. But I probably won't be watching much of those again anyway in the future, just due to J.K. Rowling being a raging bitch, but not going to get into all of that here. But just using that as an example of movies where I have acknowledged the differences between the books and everything, between the source material. So I'm speaking from experience where it's never a good idea to just view it as an adaptation. But yeah, either way, tell me your thoughts down below, and thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry for the ranting, sorry for the rambling, but I had to say what I had to say. So for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.